Understanding the devastating effects of economic sanctions on countries' populations. Living in a country where basic needs are not met, healthcare is scarce, and poverty is rampant is a harsh reality that many people face. Unfortunately, these circumstances often arise as a result of economic sanctions imposed by powerful nations. If you're new to this channel, please do like and subscribe the channel for more such content. In this video, we will delve into the devastating effects of economic sanctions on countries' populations. Introduction. Imagine for a moment the impact of living under such conditions. Families struggle to put food on the table, access essential medical treatment becomes increasingly difficult, and opportunities for betterment are limited or non-existent. These dire consequences must be examined closely to fully comprehend the gravity of the situation. Throughout this video, we will explore various aspects related to economic sanctions, from their definition and purpose to their historical prevalence and real-life examples. We will also conduct a comprehensive literature review that unveils the human consequences of these measures through methodology and findings from various studies. By examining case studies like Iran, Afghanistan, and Venezuela, we aim to shed light on specific situations where innocent people have suffered due to economic sanctions. Understanding these instances can help us grasp the full extent of the hardships faced by populations subjected to such measures. Furthermore, we will discuss the implications arising from economic sanctions and propose recommendations for alternative approaches that prioritize diplomacy over blanket economic penalties. It is essential to consider more targeted measures instead of inflicting harm upon innocent populations when formulating policies. In conclusion, it is crucial that policymakers acknowledge how economic sanctions wreak havoc on countries' populations. The repercussions extend far beyond abstract numbers, they affect real people's lives profoundly. By calling attention to this pressing issue and urging further research into its complex dynamics between economic sanctions and human suffering, we hope to inspire change for a better future. Examining the devastating effects of economic sanctions on countries' populations. Economic sanctions can be likened to a formidable weapon that powerful nations use to punish or pressure other countries. These measures are implemented with the intention of promoting global security, democracy, or human rights. However, it is crucial to acknowledge that these actions often come at a significant cost. By imposing economic sanctions, countries aim to influence the behavior of targeted countries through economic means rather than resorting to armed conflict. The underlying principle is that by applying financial pressure on a nation's economy, restricting trade, freezing assets, or blocking access to international markets, they can compel the targeted country's government to change its policies or behavior. Governments justify these sanctions as necessary measures for maintaining global stability and addressing perceived threats posed by certain regimes. They argue that such actions provide leverage for negotiation and promote adherence to international norms and standards. While economic sanctions may appear justifiable from a political standpoint, it is crucial to examine their impact on innocent populations affected by these measures. The consequences can be far-reaching, affecting various aspects of people's lives such as healthcare availability, poverty rates, and overall well-being. It is important for us to understand the growing prevalence of economic sanctions worldwide. Shocking statistics reveal an alarming increase in the use of such measures over time. Organizations like the United Nations Human Rights Council have raised concerns about their indiscriminate impact on civilian populations. Through historical examples like Cuba, North Korea, or Iraq, where innocent people have suffered due to economic sanctions, we are reminded of the devastating effects faced by vulnerable communities when basic needs are left unmet. As we delve deeper into this topic, it becomes evident that economic sanctions have significant implications for both individuals and societies as a whole. It is essential that we critically analyze the human consequences resulting from these measures in order to develop effective policies that mitigate harm while achieving desired outcomes. Historical examples: the devastating effects of economic sanctions. In our introduction, we asked you to imagine living in a country where your basic needs are not met, healthcare is scarce, and poverty is rampant. Unfortunately, this harsh reality has been experienced by innocent people in several real-life instances where economic sanctions have been imposed. One such example is Cuba, which has faced economic sanctions from the United States since the 1960s. These sanctions have had a profound impact on the Cuban population, restricting access to essential goods and services and contributing to widespread poverty. North Korea is another country that has suffered greatly due to economic sanctions. With a significant portion of its economy dependent on international trade for food and resources, these sanctions have led to severe shortages of food and vital necessities for North Korean citizens. Iraq provides yet another sobering case study. In the decades following the Gulf War in 1991, economic sanctions were imposed on Iraq that resulted in dire consequences for its population. The restrictions on imports severely limited access to medicines and medical supplies, leading to increased mortality rates among vulnerable segments of society. These historical examples serve as poignant reminders that innocent people bear the brunt of economic sanctions imposed by powerful nations. Entire populations endure immense hardship as their basic needs go unmet and essential services become scarce. By revisiting these instances briefly, we aim to emphasize the devastating effects that economic sanctions can have on countries' populations. It underscores the urgent need for further examination of this issue so that policies can be formulated with careful consideration of their potential human impact. Literature review: Unveiling the Human Consequences. Numerous studies have delved into the devastating effects of economic sanctions on countries' populations, revealing intriguing findings that highlight the negative impacts across key indicators. These studies have shed light on how income levels, poverty rates, mortality rates, and human rights violations are significantly affected by these measures. Through rigorous methodologies and comprehensive analyses, researchers have revealed a significant correlation between economic sanctions and adverse outcomes in areas such as income levels, poverty rates, mortality rates, and human rights violations. These findings emphasize the far-reaching implications of economic sanctions beyond their intended purpose. One study examined the impact of economic sanctions on Iran, Afghanistan, and Venezuela, three countries that have experienced extensive periods of trade embargoes and other forms of economic restrictions. The results indicated a notable decline in GDP growth rates, oil production/export data, and overall economic stability during sanction periods for each country. Additionally, vulnerable groups within these populations suffered disproportionately due to limited access to essential resources like food and medicine. Poverty rates increased significantly among these marginalized communities as import restrictions hindered their ability to meet basic needs. The limitations imposed by international isolation also had severe consequences for employment opportunities and development programs in war-torn Afghanistan. Data availability during this period presented challenges in fully evaluating the overall impact. However, anecdotal evidence suggests that livelihoods were greatly affected. Similarly, Venezuela has faced significant socio-economic repercussions as a result of U.S.-imposed sanctions since 2017. Income levels plummeted dramatically while poverty rates skyrocketed amidst rampant inflation. Healthcare services deteriorated considerably along with nutrition standards for ordinary Venezuelans. These findings from literature reviews provide compelling evidence regarding the detrimental effects of economic sanctions on countries' populations. It is clear that innocent civilians bear the brunt of such measures while powerful nations aim to achieve political objectives or address perceived threats through these actions. However, it is important to note that further research is needed to fully understand the precise causal mechanisms at work in this complex dynamic. Promising measurement techniques are being developed to uncover these relationships and provide a more nuanced understanding of the impacts, implications, and recommendations. When examining the effects of economic sanctions on a country's population, it is crucial to consider the causal mechanisms at work behind these devastating consequences. While precise understanding requires further research, promising measurement techniques are being developed to shed light on this complex dynamic. One significant causal mechanism is the disruption of trade and commerce. Economic sanctions often restrict a country's ability to engage in international trade, hampering their economic growth and development. This can lead to a decline in income levels for individuals and businesses, exacerbating poverty rates within the population. Another crucial factor is the impact on access to vital resources and services. Sanctions may limit or completely block imports of necessary goods such as medicine, food, and humanitarian aid. As a result, vulnerable populations suffer from inadequate healthcare services, malnutrition, and other related health issues. Furthermore, economic sanctions can have unintended negative consequences even when exceptions for humanitarian purposes exist. The implementation of safeguard mechanisms designed to mitigate harm sometimes falls short in practice. Innocent civilians often bear the brunt of these measures as they struggle with worsened living conditions brought about by limited access to basic necessities. Considering these implications calls for thoughtful policy recommendations that balance diplomatic objectives with protecting human rights and well-being. Instead of resorting to blanket economic sanctions that harm innocent populations indiscriminately, targeted measures should be explored as alternatives. Diplomatic negotiations offer an avenue for resolving conflicts without inflicting undue suffering on civilian populations. By engaging parties in dialogue, countries can seek mutually beneficial solutions that address concerns while minimizing adverse effects on people's lives. In conclusion, understanding the causal mechanisms behind the effects of economic sanctions on countries' populations is crucial to developing effective policies that prioritize both global security objectives and human welfare. Further research into this complex issue will help policymakers make informed decisions regarding economic measures imposed on nations. Closing statement/hook reference. In conclusion, the devastating effects of economic sanctions on countries' populations cannot be ignored. As we delved into the world of economic warfare, we witnessed how innocent people suffer when their basic needs are not met, healthcare becomes scarce, and poverty runs rampant. Throughout this journey, we explored various aspects related to economic sanctions, from their definition and purpose, to historical examples like Cuba, North Korea, Iraq, and more recently Iran, Afghanistan, and Venezuela. We encountered alarming statistics and real-life stories that showcase the indiscriminate impact of economic sanctions on civilian populations. The literature review revealed significant negative consequences on key indicators such as income levels, poverty rates, mortality rates, and human rights violations. Case studies illuminated the heartbreaking realities faced by individuals in Iran with increased poverty among vulnerable groups and scarcity of essential medicines due to import restrictions. In war-torn Afghanistan, international isolation severely impacted employment opportunities and development programs. In Venezuela's case, income levels plummeted while healthcare services deteriorated, further aggravating an already dire humanitarian crisis. Understanding precise causal mechanisms requires further research, however, promising measurement techniques are being developed to shed light on these intricate dynamics. Despite limited effectiveness of safeguard mechanisms like humanitarian exceptions, which often lead to unintended negative consequences, exploring alternatives such as diplomatic negotiations and targeted measures instead of blanket economic sanctions could offer hope for a better future. In summary, policymakers must fully comprehend the ramifications of their decisions that have profound implications for people's lives before implementing economic sanctions. It is imperative that we address this pressing issue with compassion and strive towards finding solutions that balance global security goals without causing unnecessary suffering. As we reflect upon our initial scenario where basic needs went unmet due to economic sanctions imposed by powerful nations, let us remember why it is crucial to confront this challenge head-on. By taking action now and advocating for policies that prioritize human well-being alongside larger geopolitical objectives, together we can create a world where no one has to bear the burdens of economic warfare.